Okay, away we go. If anybody is watching from home, I got my camera back. Somebody had taken it. So hello. We're going to move on to loops. Everybody should have finished up to quiz 4, conditionals review. You have 4 days off now, so if you're not anywhere near this spot here, then you should probably take some time to get to that spot over the next 4 days. If you're anywhere inside the Python lessons and assignments, you're probably still okay time-wise. If you're not in there, then you're definitely behind and need to do some extra work. Okay, so lesson 13, loops. It's a shorter lesson, but this is a little bit more confusing than some of the stuff we've covered right now. I have an old video here you can watch, or you can also click back to this video to watch that at any point too. Okay, loops can be a bit confusing, as up till now, the program always executed in order. Line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it never ever changed that. When you start using a loop, you're telling the computer to go back and not necessarily follow a sequential order in the program lines. Okay, so this is the first loop that we're going to have. We use the keyword for to start it. That is an automatic indicator to the computer that it's going to be coming back to line 2 until such time as whatever parameters we set for the loop have terminated. And then it skips ahead. It skips everything related to the loop, and it goes on to the next line in the code. So if we start with the most simple loop that we could use, we're going to say for x in range 0, 10. And then we're going to say print x. Okay, so this is a very simple loop, and I'll explain each step of it here. So this initiates our loop. This is the variable that a value is going to be stored in for every iteration of that loop. So an iteration is just another time that the loop is carried out. So let's say we had 6 or 7 commands inside this loop that are all indented. Okay? All of those commands would be carried out, and then when it gets back up to line 1, that's 1 iteration. All the commands would be carried out again, that's 2 iterations. So you could have endless loops, or you could have loop a specific set amount of time, or you can have a loop based on a condition. So you can have the loop until you reach this condition. Until this is true, I want you to keep looping. Okay? Or you can do the vice versa, and you could say, until this is false, keep looping. Okay, so for this one, we're just doing a range. We're starting, our start point is 0, our end point is 10. And you can see I don't have quotations in there, so these are just integers, 0 to 10. So all I'm saying is for this variable x, in the range of 0 to 10, print x. So right now the value of x is nothing. We have a variable there that does not have a value associated with it. The computer reads x and it says, okay, I'm going to print whatever the value of x is until it tells me to stop. This inside of a loop is, these parameters are your start point, your end point, and your increment. Okay, all loops have those 3, all 4 loops have those 3 parameters in the brackets. Okay, so 0 is our start point, 10 is our termination point, and 1 is the increment that is going to go up. Now if your increment is 1, you don't have to put it. Okay, the computer will default to 1 as the increment. All right, so the first time this loop runs, x's value is 0. So when it prints x, it prints 0. Now it goes back up to check to see if it's reached the end of the loop. The value of x is now 1. Is that between 0 and 10? Yep. So it runs the loop again, and it prints 1. Does it again for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Once it gets to the last one, it terminates because it's now reached the end of the index. Okay? So you can see it doesn't include 10 because 10 is our termination point. Once the value of x is 10, the loop terminates and it skips ahead to line 3. So it's not going to print 10. So if you wanted 10 print, you would have to add that plus 1 in. Okay? Stop me if you have questions as we go through this. I want to make sure everybody's is keeping up and understanding. So again, that's what this actually looks like if I include all 3 parameters. What does it have me going to next? Okay, so increments here. Right now I ran this with 1 increment. It goes up by 1 every time. Now I'm going to have the increment go up by 2s. So the value of x to start is 0. When it runs through the loop once, it's going to go up on an increment of 2, so the value of x is going to be 2. Then the value of x is 4, then 6, then 8, then 10. And you can see I'll get each one of those printed, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and it will not print that last one because once the value of x is 10, it terminates the loop. Okay, and I can change that to be, whatever I want it to be. Very slow today. Whatever I want the increment to be, I change it at that, and that's every time the loop iterates, that's what it does. Okay, I can also do decreasing increments, so I can reverse the loop by putting the higher number second and using a -1 for the increment. All right, so instead of starting at 0, I'm going to start at 10. My termination point is when the value of x is 0, and I want to go backwards by 1 each time. So the value of x the first time is 10, then it's 9, then 8, 7, 6, and so on. Okay, and you can see that it prints the 1 because 0 is the termination point. That stuff's relatively simple. Okay, so I talked about that. If you wanted to get the 0, you can't make your termination point 0. If you want to get the number in your termination point, you'd have to add 1 to it. Or -1 if you're going backwards. Okay, loops and strings. So if we create let's get rid of this. If we create I'll be okay. A string variable called Star Wars, like so. All right, now we have a string variable called Star Wars, and we want to print out our string variable. Now we could just say print title, and that would print it all in one line. But let's say we wanted to print each character from that string variable on one line by itself. So then I'd say print title, and I go to the index, and I say spot 0. There is no variable called title with a capital T. So now when I print this is very slow today. I just get the first character. Now to do the entire thing, I'd have to say print title 1. And then I'd have to run that. And now I should get the T. Wow. Very slow. I apologize. Okay, maybe I won't be able to run these too many times. Okay, but you'd see over and over again, I would have to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines of code in order to print that out all by itself. Okay? So instead of that, I'm going to use this loop right here. And there is a lot going on. All right? But I should be able to explain it relatively easy. So I'm going to pull this one out now, and I'm going to say for index in range 0 len title colon print title index. Okay, so now when I run this, hopefully this works. Okay, so now rather than have those 9 lines of code, I have 2 lines of code. And you can see each character, including the space, has been printed. Now, I understand there's lots going on here, but if you slow it down, you break it up piece by piece, just like we did in our first loop, we're going to be running through an index. So the computer knows that. It knows to expect a start point and a termination point. Our termination point is the index of our string variable. Okay, and if you remember indexes, oh man, what did I just do? Okay, fixed. Remember, when you index a string, the first character is 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spots inside that index. And now I remember telling all of you about that annoying +1 when you use an index for a string variable. We avoid having to pick spot 9 because we use the function len. And if you remember the function len, it doesn't relate to the index of a string variable. It just relates to the number of characters in that string. So we say, wait, did I erase my... I did. Okay. Okay, good. So I still give it the index point of 0, which is the starting point. 0 is S. We knew that already. Rather than saying 9 or having to add 1 and say 10 in order for it to print the entire string, 1 line at a time, I just tell it, print until you get to the end. Using the len function, the len function knows the end of the string. So rather than trying to mess around with the index, we just say that. Now, the same thing exists here, but remember, we don't have to put it in if the increment is 1. So you remember that all 4 loops have a start point, a termination point, and an increment. The increment is 1, so we just don't need it. All right? Then we just say print title using the index above. So the value of index on the first iteration of this loop is the index point 0, S. So when we print it, it grabs the S. Second one is T, then A, then R, then space, and it does each one as we go forward. Okay, does that make sense? That's all that this is explaining down here. Do we have questions? Because that was a bit confusing. Okay. Now, this doesn't 100% make sense. I don't know why when you're using a string variable you would ever want to go up in increments of 2, but maybe if you're playing Wheel of Fortune or something. Oh, I wrecked my string variable. So now it just goes up in increments of 2. So it starts at index point 0, it prints index point 0, it goes up by 2, so it goes 0, 1, 2, A is next, 1, 2, the space is next, 1, 2, the A is next, and then 1, 2, the S is the final spot. Okay, I don't know why in a string variable you'd ever want to go up by 2, but that's how you do it. Printing the string in reverse order. This is where it can get a touch confusing because now you can't use that len function. You can't use the len function because we're going to go backwards. So we don't want it to stop at the length. We want it to stop at the index point 0. So if you look at the example here, we say for index in range, the start point of the loop is the end of the string. The end point is 0 and the increment is -1. So when we try that, So our start point is the length of the string. The termination point is index point 0. And our increment is -1. Because we want to start with the S and go SRAW space RATS. So now when we run this, we get an error. Okay, and I have that error listed in here. Okay, we have to remember to account for that +1 issue when we're using the index. Because we're going backwards, this becomes a -1. So our start point is the length of the title -1 because we're going backwards. So we have len -1. No. Now when we run that, we almost get what we're going for. Okay, we end up with the SRAW space RAT, but we lose the final S. Again, because our index point is at 0, so when it gets to that spot, it's going to stop. We have to account for the +1, but we're going backwards, so it's a -1. And when we do that, we get all the characters from our string variable all at once. That's all this is explaining through here. Okay, and it's just accounting for that very, very annoying +1. Okay, don't include this in your code when you go through this lesson, but there is a simpler way to do it. I showed it the way I showed it to you so that you understood how it worked. But if you want to do it an easier way, you can just say for letter in title, print letter. And then it'll just print that all the way through. Okay, it's an easier way of doing what you've done. I'm not going to, I don't like showing you that in case people are confused and they don't understand how it works. I want you to be able to understand how the loop functions using the 3 parameters so that it works. Okay, while loops are another option. I don't use them a ton. I use a while loop most often to run a game. So if we were playing rock, paper, scissors and you throw it into you throw all of your code into a while loop and you introduce some condition that says, would you like to play again? Enter 1 for yes, 2 for no, or Y for yes, N for no. And then you say, while that variable is equal to Y, run the program. If it's not equal to Y, that program just terminates. Okay, so a while loop is very easy. We just say, and I'm going to do something that you're never supposed to do as a coder because computers really dislike it. So let's say while true, print enough Baron. Okay, so the while loop, it's the same as our if-then statement. It's the same as our for loop. It has a colon here telling the computer, hey, there's something more coming later. We indent off the while, and then we give our command we want it to carry out if the condition is true. So what I've done here is I've created a condition that's always going to be true. Because this is always going to be true, this is always going to print. All right? This is called an infinite loop. And it's something that you want to avoid because it can cause your computer to get mad and give up because it knows it's never going to end. All right? I've taught this lesson, I don't know, over the years 50 times. And one time I clicked run and my whole computer crashed. It wasn't broken, I had to restart it. So if I click this and it does crash, because it's been a little slow today, that is the end. I'll try and join back up to explain the assignment. But this is what you end up getting. And you can see it's just continuing to print down here over and over and over and over again. Because there's no way this condition ever changes to false. So when you're using while loops, make sure you give it a termination point. Make sure you give it a way for that termination to actually occur. Because right now, this is just going to run forever. And it looks like my computer's not going to crash. So avoid infinite loops, while loops, for loops. Those are the 2 options that you have. Any questions? Okay, moving on to the next assignment. I have 2 of them. The first one's the guessing game. Oh, I didn't put the link in there. I apologize again. Okay, the guessing game is here. If you give me 10 seconds after this lesson's over, I'll go in and embed that so that you don't have to follow the code. All right. Write a Python program that guesses a number between 1 and 9. User is prompted to enter a guess. If the user guesses wrong, then the prompt appears again until the guess is correct. On a successful guess, user will get a well-guessed message and exit the program. Okay, if you feel like you want to do something a little more advanced, you can have a second player input the number to be guessed. You can give an error number if the message outside the range is chosen. So you can tell a user, pick a number between 0 and 9. And they will pick dog because they're users. That's what they do. All right? So what happens if they do that? Put some piece of code in there that figures that out. Keep a running score from game to game. Give a higher or lower prompt for a wrong guess. So if the number is 5 and the user guessed 3, it says incorrect, the number is higher than that. And then the user can continue to figure out based on the hints it's being given. You'll need to import the following method to allow randomization to work, because in order to establish a target number, you have to randomize it. Okay, so it's missing that picture. I hope it might be in the class, but you want to establish a target number. So you want to have a variable that would be called something like target underscore number and then user underscore number. The target underscore number is a randomized number between 0 and 9, and the target number, and the user number is the one that the user is prompted to enter. Okay, and then you have a loop continue until those two numbers match. All right, and this is the random.randint that you use to establish a random pick. That's the code that you need to establish a random integer and not equal to. I didn't really cover this one either. So you could use a while loop that says while the target number is not equal to the user number or the player number, run the entire program. Okay, so if I'd say while it's equal to the number, as soon as they get it right, the program would run. All right, you want to put that exclamation point in front of the equals. That means not equal. All right. Comments as usual. All right, going back to this one's also needs to be completed after this lesson. Write a Python program that creates a multiplication table from 1 to 10 of a user entered number. So you prompt the user to enter a number. The program outputs the times table for that number from 1 to 10. Okay? Allow the user to enter multiple numbers if you're ahead of the game and you want to go through that. That one's relatively simple. There is supposed to be an image in here that gives you more detail on this guessing game, but the image is missing. So I'm going to try and look for that and give it back to you so that you have it. In the meantime, you're going to have to just kind of go trial and error to get this to work until I can find that image. It used to be in here. That's why I have this line that says, here's a sample flowchart of what the program should look like. And then there was an image, but that image looks like it's gone. All right. Those two assignments, most definitely they could be done by the end of today. I'll probably give you a little extra time Tuesday. We have a shorter class Tuesday. So I'll probably end up giving you that class for this one as well. So if we say you have, you have until the end of class today, no school Friday, and on Monday there's no school. Tuesday is a shortened class because it's parent-teacher interviews. So I'm going to say this one's due by the end of class Tuesday. And that's both of them. The guessing game and the multiplication table. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to put the embeds in there. I'm going to look for that flowchart image. That is all. Have a wonderful long weekend for those of you that are at home.